Welcome to the Authority File. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. In the fall of 2019, the MIT Press was awarded an $850,000 grant from the Arcadia Fund for an ambitious project. Over a 3-year period, the press planned to develop a sustainable business model to allow it to release its front and back lists of monographs open access. And by the end of the 3-year project, MIT Press plans to make its model freely available to the university press community to adapt for their own open access ambitions. Back in April 2020 on the Authority File, we met with Terry Ealing, Director of Strategic Initiatives at MIT Press, and Raim Crow, a senior consultant at Spark, who was working with MIT Press on the OA publishing model project. At the time, they were conducting a deep dive into the monograph publishing market, studying the mind-bending array of variables to construct a foundation upon which to build the press's OA framework. You might want to go back and listen to those episodes, numbers 118 through 121, if you haven't already. Fast forward a year, and MIT Press has landed on a collective action pricing model called Direct to Open that they're about ready to roll out for their catalog. If successful, MIT Press will open all of its monographs, about 90 titles per year, starting in 2022 across its STEAM, Humanities, and Social Sciences categories. Joining me for an update on the project are Emily Farrell, Library Partnerships and Sales Lead at the MIT Press, and Greg Yao, President of the Center for Research Libraries. In this first of our 4-episode series sponsored by MIT Press, we're introduced to Emily and Greg, and we catch up on the progress the project has made in the last year. Okay, Emily and Greg, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Why don't we start, if you don't mind, if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves. And Emily, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So my role at the MIT Press is in library partnerships and sales. So most of the work I do is talking to libraries, which is a lovely privilege, and making sure that what the MIT Press is publishing is visible, and there's ways to sort of talk to libraries about what they need and take feedback back to the press. Before I started at MIT, I was doing a similar job at a different press, but started in publishing as an editor and have something of an academic background. So sort of the chance to talk about books and to talk to libraries about those books is really is a great place to be.
Exactly. Good. And Greg, how about you?
Sure. So Greg Yao, I'm here in Chicago. I'm the president of the Center for Research Libraries in Chicago. I've been at CRL for about a year and a half, and CRL is just a large consortium that's dedicated to building a collective collection among research libraries. So research libraries collectively building, preserving, and disseminating collections and content. So I'm a librarian and a historian by background. Before I came to CRL, I was the associate director of collections at the MIT libraries, where I had a portfolio that I was in charge of collection development, open access, the archives and special collections, and also had the privilege of being on the editorial board of the MIT Press. Now I'm still on the management board of the MIT Press. And before MIT, I was a curator. I built collections in U.S. history at the Harvard Library and at the Yale Library. And I guess it's pertinent for me to mention at Yale, I chaired, it's almost a decade ago, I chaired an ebooks strategic plan task force, which given all the changes in the environment, it's like a primary source document now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. Excellent. Okay. So, Emily, give us sort of an elevator pitch version or a refresher version of MIT Press's recent efforts to pursue open access publishing, but specifically, because I know you guys have been doing this for a while, but more recently, there's been a project that's emerged from and with the support from the Arcadia Fund.
So, as you said, the MIT Press has worked in trying to find innovative ways to make scholarly content in particular more open and accessible. And we've been pretty keenly aware that books have been somewhat left behind in the picture for open access and accessibility, very broadly speaking. So, we have been participating in a number of fantastic initiatives. The Tome Initiative, for instance, supporting first monographs that has brought together libraries and presses to support monographs. We've also received funding from the Mellon Foundation to make some books open in particular subject areas. And they've been very important initiatives, but none of those have so far really comprehensively allowed us to make the whole monograph program open. And that's been something of a conundrum. How do we get there in a way that's sustainable for the press, that allows us to do what we do in the ways that we do it, in the ways that we think these books deserve, and make these works more open, or make them open access. And so we were lucky enough to get support from the Arcadia Fund towards the end of 2019 to, first of all, make a set of books open. So we did that immediately. We made some backlist titles open, and then used funding to make some of the frontlist titles last year published directly open access. But the real guts of the project were to develop a business model to work out how we can support making frontlist monographs and edited scholarly books open from the publication date. And so that's what we've spent the last year or so, year and a half doing, is drawing all the data we can together to get a model in shape to put out to the library community.
Okay, excellent. And Greg, curious if you've had a role in this program at all, and whether or not, how a program like this might line up with CRL's priorities.
Sure. Well, when it comes to CRL, CRL is just a collective collection. So research libraries building collections and stewarding them at the network level. And so having a plan for how you leverage a collective collection like CRL to acquire monograph content in ways that are that meet the needs of libraries, whether it's price, licensing terms, works well with workflows, or digital preservation aims. Having CRL play a healthy role in the developing ebook marketplace to promote all of the research values that research libraries have is really, really crucial. And to boil down our priorities is, the more we look at this space, the more we realize that we have to partner more directly upstream with our colleagues in academic publishing. So working with the university presses to work together to develop business models and sustainability plans so that we're all successful, because we really see university presses and research libraries as being parts of the same mission. This model really allows us to change the conversation in some exciting ways between libraries and presses. And so that's why we're really excited about this model and similar models.
Excellent. Okay. So when we last spoke on this podcast with your colleagues, Emily, the press was performing a cost analysis, studying the market and examining financial and business models that would not only support an OA publishing model, but could also be standardized for any university press to use. So that was kind of a neat kicker to this whole program, is that it's not just you guys doing this. It's really something that could be a model for anyone to adopt. Can you fill us in on what's happened since then? I mean, what were some of the conclusions and major observations that came out of that exploratory phase?
Yeah, so at this stage we're getting ready to officially launch the model. So that's happening in the next few weeks, and so we have gone through something of an iterative process, taking this analysis that we've done, looking comprehensively at revenue streams for monographs and scholarly books, as well as doing as much as we can to look at what libraries are purchasing, how they're purchasing them, examining variations in collection budgets, and trying to make sure that the way that we're putting a fee structure together for the library community for this collective action model will be in reach and also financially sustainable for the press to continue with the program. So what we have is the model is now sort of set to recoup partial direct costs for monographs. So, taking into account what we know about the different revenue streams for monographs and how we assess that in our expenses and so forth for monographs, setting a threshold that we are going to have to reach to make this set of books open access, and that we'll need libraries to come together to support. And we know that because of the way that the market currently is, nobody is used to paying the real market value for these books. So we know that we can't cover everything with this model, but we are sort of able to, I think we've gotten to a place that is a sustainable threshold. And so and that's sort of balanced with the number of libraries that will need to support the model. So these factors all sort of drawing together, and based on the data we could look at, costs, revenue, what the market looks like, what libraries are used to paying for books, and then, what sort of the balance between those is. One of the challenges, of course, is that the data is not the cleanest. Mm-hmm. Books are quite challenging in that regard. We work with aggregators. We, for the last 2 years, have been offering ebooks to libraries on our own platform, which has been fantastic and has been hugely beneficial in opening up conversations directly with libraries where they would have previously been going through aggregators. But it does mean that the sort of data sources are very different, and there are gaps. So we've really done the best we can to draw all of that together and put together a model that takes into account something that's more fine-grained than just, say, looking at a set of libraries, placing Carnegie classifications on the top and going with that.
Yeah.
So the other piece of the question was whether we are the piece where we can use the model or other presses can use the model. And I think that's an incredibly important part. And that hope is absolutely still there. So the model that we've built is shareable and will be usable for other presses. So we do sort of plan to provide the resources for other presses to take this on. I think that there's a real need for presses to be able to do this work on their own with the right tools, because we need bibliodiversity. We need different presses doing different things. But to have sort of a shared toolkit is incredibly important to allow other universities' presses to assess what they have, they know their strengths, they can take on this model when they can and where they can, and deploy it in the ways that make the most sense to their publishing program.
Right. So this model could be considered like a collective action. How would you describe the model? What would you call it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a library collective action model.
Yep.
So the intention is to, as Greg said as well, that the intention is to try to create something collaborative between the press and libraries, where we are solving this issue of openness and financially sustainable models for vital long form research through this collective approach.
Okay. So is the model going to be open itself, or is this sort of a licensing opportunity for MIT Press, or is it just something anyone can have it and anyone can take it whenever they want, basically?
That's the intention.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We're not. There are no plans to license the model. It is openly shareable with other presses.
Great. You just heard from Emily Farrell, Library Partnerships and Sales Lead at the MIT Press, and Greg Yao, President of the Center for Research Libraries. This 4-part series is brought to you by the MIT Press. Join us next week when we continue our conversation and talk about Direct to Open's collective action model and how it fits into library budgets and needs.
In one part, there's the pure collective good of making these works open access. At the same time, libraries that support the model will also gain access to the corresponding back catalogue of monographs and edited books, which is somewhere around, it's over 2,000 titles. And that's for the year of, the library commits to the year of support and receives access to this content. So there is something of a self-interest built into it as well. And one of the interesting additional sort of appeals of the model, I would say, for libraries is that We plan to have a commitment window this year, later in the year, and once that closes, if we haven't actually met the threshold we need and we can't make any books open, any library that has agreed to commit to the model will still get that back file access and will not have to pay for it. So there really is quite a lot of incentive, I think, to support the model.
If you like what you hear, rate us or give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced by Choice's senior digital media producer, Mark Dirks, and digital media assistant, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.